The Department of Commerce is actively deploying investments that are helping to set the stage for this diverse economy, and we are grateful to have with us today Don Graves, the Deputy Secretary of the Department of Commerce, here to discuss America's next economy. To kick off our opening plenary, I'm also very honored to be able to introduce the Honorable Henry Cisneros, former Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Mayor of San Antonio, and the current Chairman of American III, an infrastructure investment firm. We are delighted that he is with us as well. So please, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Deputy Secretary of Commerce, Don Graves, and the Honorable Henry Cisneros.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Gaddy. Thank you, all of you, for being present. I want to particularly thank Gaddy for his public service, but also the job he's done in recent years in serving as chair of the Aspen Latinos and Society program. It's impossible to thank Gaddy for what he's done without recognizing Dominica Lynch as well. She's taken an important commitment from Aspen and turned it into something really magnificent. I know Aspen appreciates it as an organization, but we should too. So thank you to that team. And it's really important what Aspen has done here in creating this program, but specifically in this incarnation, this program on looking at the new economy, trying to figure out what is the American future economy, because we can't be thinking about what we're doing at the local level or what we're doing in the Latino community without putting it in context. And the context is the change that's coming. And some of it is very profound change, as we're here, as we'll learn today. I'm very honored to be able to join Secretary Don Graves, the Deputy Secretary of the Department of Commerce. The Department of Commerce has vast responsibilities with respect to the economy at all levels, as well as the infrastructure of the economy, things like the meteorological system and the mapping system and the census system and all of those things that provide critical information about the economy and support for the economy. You may have seen in the newspapers in recent days that the Secretary of Commerce just went to China and spent days working on precisely these issues that we're going to be talking about this morning. Secretary Graves, thank you so much for joining us. Secretary Graves' background includes a time at Key Bank and other responsibilities in the economy. But we'll start the conversation, Secretary, by asking you to talk a little bit about what is the new economy? What are the elements of the new economy? A whole day here talking about preparing for it. What's the shape of it?
Well, Mr. Secretary, thank you for having me. Dominica, thank you for inviting me to be a part of this conversation. And I have so many friends in the audience that it almost feels like we're having one of the usual conversations over lunch or dinner or drinks. My view is, as a lot of folks here have heard, is that we have an evolution going on in the economy. We have an evolution not just here in the United States, but across the globe. And for us to be able to succeed in this new economy, we have to build it in a way that is inclusive, that recognizes the emerging technologies and industries, and does it in a way that makes sure that we don't leave communities that have traditionally been forgotten and build them into the economy. So that requires this major investment in infrastructure, the investment in the new technologies like semiconductors, like AI, like clean tech, the types of things that the President has done over the course of the last 2 years. But we have to do it in a way that is mindful of the reality of the way our economy has played out over hundreds of years, and that's that some communities have succeeded, and others have lost out as these evolutions in the economy have gone on. So the President has been, and Vice President have been very focused on making sure that as we make these investments, we do it in a way that lifts up all communities and creates opportunities for a lot of people, because brain power, innovation doesn't wholly exist in New York or Silicon Valley or Austin, not to pick on those communities, but it exists all over the country. So we have to lift up so many others as we're investing in and evolving our economy.
So almost every sector of the economy is changing, and I get the impression that we're at a point of inflection where what is just ahead is fundamentally different than what we've had. It's not just sort of incremental or gradual change, but all of a sudden, bam, we're in a completely new place. And you see that in aviation, you see that in broadband and communications, you see it in transportation, you see it in almost every imaginable form of the economy. When you think about this, are there sort of milestones or guideposts or things that you say, this is going to be different?
Absolutely. And part of this is a recognition that, that there are these critical and emerging technologies that are accelerating the pace of change. Like AI, artificial intelligence, like biotech, like clean technologies and clean energy, semiconductors, our ability to drive quantum computing, supercomputers. All those are both changing our economy, but they're also driving additional changes. So AI and quantum computing are going to supercharge some of the industries that have been sort of sleepy. Advanced manufacturing, for instance, that a lot of people thought, oh, those aren't, you produce things, you build things. Well, the way that we produce is changing at almost an exponential rate.
It's also true that there are other factors besides technological change impinging. For example, who would have imagined that the pandemic would create the supply chain issues, which then forces companies to bring industry back into the United States, nearshoring, and all of a sudden we have a manufacturing sector stronger than we could have imagined as a result. Semiconductors included, which the Semiconductor Act spoke to. But there's so many places where it's just going to be a new set of opportunities, and people who are thinking the way things were are just going to miss it. Is that a fair assessment?
That is correct. We have to recognize that, we certainly recognize as a result of the pandemic that our supply chains were too attenuated, that we were too reliant on what's happening in other parts of the world. Of course, we have an integrated economy, global economy. We have to partner with our allies and our partners all around the world. That's not going to change, but we have to make sure that there are critical parts of our supply chain that we can control that are here in the U.S. or that are nearshored or ally-shored, that are relatively close by. Because the worst thing that could happen, and we saw this with semiconductors, when the automakers were running out of chips, so they would produce cars, and then those cars would sit in lots. They couldn't be driven anywhere because they were missing chips. So we have to make sure that for our national and economic security, that we are building resilient parts of our supply chain where there's criticalities, such as semiconductors. So that's why the president's been so focused on investing in rebuilding our supply chains, investing in U.S. manufacturing capacity, because I think he has recognized for a long time that U.S. American workers are just as productive as workers in any part of the world. And yeah, you can send things off to maybe make it marginally cheaper in other parts of the world, but one, the quality is nowhere near as good. And two, when you have global events like a pandemic or an invasion of a sovereign nation by an authoritarian leader, it's going to have real effects on our economy. So we should be investing in American leadership, American innovation, and American workers.
So we have a room full of people who are either in business themselves or leading advocacy organizations or for a variety of business-related things. And one of the questions that has to be on their mind to frame today is, Well, in specific terms, what are we talking about here? What are these new horizon industries? What's going to change? Can you just tick off almost everything I can think of, from shipping that requires new kinds of logistical structures, to communications, which requires broadband on a bigger scale, and there's going to be opportunities for businesses to build broadband. Obviously, renewable energy, but specific applications like EV charging for cars that are going to be the major automobile manufacturers are going to build only electronic vehicles by 2035. Just tick through some of the ones that come top of mind.
Well,
you've touched on semiconductors as an example.
Well, and you touched on some others. So clean technology is changing the game for us. The issues of climate change are existential for humanity. We've seen the challenges of heat and the fires in Maui and parts of the West over the course of the last few months. We needed to do something about it, but that doesn't mean that we have to give up on economic opportunity and job creation. We can innovate. We can drive our move away from fossil fuels to clean energy by adopting new technologies or driving those new technologies. And that's what we're seeing with EV battery plants going up all across. There's a swath from Ohio down to Georgia where there's just a slew of battery plants being constructed. The electric vehicles themselves are being built in new parts of the country.
We need something like 2 million EV charging stations between now and 2030-ish. And I think the Infrastructure Act or the IRA generates 500,000. So we're 1.5 million short that'll have to be funded by somebody. Private sector, individual entrepreneurs, et cetera, right?
That is precisely correct. And I think there are going to be huge business opportunities. We're already seeing private investment preceding a lot of the clean technology the federal clean technology investments. We see it happening in the semiconductor space. Intel, Samsung, Texas Instruments, TSMC have made huge investments already without us putting one dime of our $50+ billion into the semiconductor industry.
So I want to get in a little bit into the specific applications to small business, local businesses, disadvantaged businesses. But just a quick aside, you mentioned the fires in Maui and in California. I ran into a business a few weeks ago that is using AI and cameras to locate in places that are likely to be fire prone, so the fire can be detected when it's still small.
That's
up in
exactly
some
correct.
rural area where nobody knows that the fire has started. Before it spreads to hundreds of acres, it can be detected and dealt with early on. So that's an application for some small businesses that are going to do precisely that kind of thing. Tell us about the federal government's frame of mind, that is to say, this administration's policy position with respect to this economic change. Clearly, we're deeply indebted to the administration for the leadership on infrastructure, which had been talked about for decades, and then President Biden was able to get it done. That's massively important. Then came the Inflation Reduction Act, which is really the semiconductor investment program. Renewables.
Right, renewables, exactly.
And then the semiconductor bill as well. But what drives all of that? What's the frame of mind? Can you tell us?
Sure.
What the administration believes about its role with respect to this economic change?
Absolutely. So, and actually, I would go even before that. The American Rescue Plan, which stabilized the economy at a time coming out of the pandemic, where a lot of communities were not stable, where they didn't have the ability to help themselves out when we were reeling as an economy. So all of this was done with intentionality. We needed to rebuild our infrastructure, not just our roads and our bridges, our water systems, our electrical grid, our high-speed internet across the country. We know that there are communities that have never seen high-speed internet. They haven't even seen internet. So it was in the 21st century, we saw in the pandemic, there were parents who couldn't decide. I mean, this is gut-wrenching. They had to choose which of their 2, 3, 4, 5 kids got to go to school on a day when everyone was working remotely because they only had enough bandwidth to send one of them to school. This is the United States of America.
Right.
We shouldn't be in that situation, and that's why the president said we're going to connect everyone in America.
We
not
had,
just
we
some
had schools in disadvantaged neighborhoods where they needed to put Wi-Fi equipment on buses, drive the
Exactly.
buses to a mall parking
Exactly.
lot so families could come and their children could get access to broadband.
Precisely. So that's why we are investing in our infrastructure to ensure that everyone in this country has the infrastructure that they need to be able to compete, to innovate, to, if you're a business owner, to have the logistical support that you need to get your goods and services to market, not just across town, but across the country and across the world.
Let's talk specifically about small business, localities, and then disadvantaged businesses. In an era when there's a tax, the Supreme Court knocking down affirmative action in education, and everybody expects we're going to see the same thing on 8A and other small business incentivization. What advice do you give for how, in this audience, Latino small business can get in the game that you've just been describing, given these new barriers that we'll be facing? What are your thoughts about that?
So first off, we have to, as the president would say, deal everyone into the bargain. We have to make sure, we know that, that the Latino community has had huge growth, for instance, in small business ownership, small business startups.
I think Latina-owned businesses are the fastest sector of business growth in America. I believe
in the last 10 years, there's been a 34% increase in the ownership of businesses by Latinos, compared to 1% for everybody else. So that is a stark difference. The problem is that we still only have 375,000, I think, somewhere in that range, Latino-owned businesses that employ people. And I make that distinction because you can start a business where you're the only person who works there, or maybe you don't even really work there. You have a business.
Right.
But it's being able to have a business that employs people that's critically important. So that is a very small number of businesses in this country.
And then scaling up.
And then scaling up. So what the president is focused on is building equity into everything that we've done across the administration. So our investments in infrastructure, our investments in clean tech and clean energy, our investments in chips, building a component that focuses on supporting or including minority and other underserved businesses. That's critically important. Also making sure that we have a place-based focus to this work, because place matters. If we aren't intentional about the way that we make investments in communities, that we lift up communities that are often forgotten, and we, especially with our economic development efforts, we're going to see the Austins, Silicon Valleys, the New York cities, et cetera, continuing to thrive, and these communities that have always had challenges being left behind.
You mentioned place-based. I want to single out the Aspen initiative that Dominica got underway in 6 cities with large Latino populations: Miami, Chicago, San Antonio, Phoenix, San Bernardino, and El Paso over the last year and a half or so, where the focus has been place-based emphasis on entrepreneurship and small business development, and it shows that it can be done. They're generating some tremendous successes, but we just need to replicate it everywhere that there are Latinos in business. Mr. Secretary, this clock tells me we're running out of time, so let me just ask you whether you are optimistic that we can, one, generate this new economy and make it work for people, and secondly, whether you're optimistic about how we move the Latino community into a truly hyper-speed integration into that new economy. Are you optimistic about that?
Mr. Secretary, I could not be more optimistic about the prospects of this country and our economy. We are in a place that I don't think anyone could have imagined we would be just 3 years ago. I look at the types of industrial growth in the Latino community, in communities that have often been left behind, that is astounding. It's investments in workforce. It's what we're seeing. I have the good fortune of being the economic growth coordinator for Puerto Rico. And what we're seeing is a comprehensive all-of-government approach to supporting an archipelago that has been forgotten, that has been underinvested in or disinvested, not just for decades, but for more than 100 years. And it's time that we show up in a way that we haven't before. So in Aguadilla, there's a spaceport that's being built. Who would have thought that you'd be building a spaceport in Puerto Rico? It's investments like that, and the space industry is going to be $1 trillion industry in the next 6.5 years, 7 years is what I'm seeing.
Musk is building his spaceport in the most southern point of the United States, which is Brownsville, Texas.
So this is an opportunity in communities that have never succeeded. But I think that it's going to take a whole range of folks. So Nina Vaca, continuing to show leadership as business owners, growing businesses Latino businesses across the country, bringing those who are coming from behind. Not to say that Nina's all that old; she's very young. But there are a group of new entrepreneurs who are coming behind, who have ideas, who are seeing these new opportunities in new industries, and giving them the support through the Minority Business Development Agency, through SBA, but also through private capital, through the organizations like La Raza Development Fund, that are really driving economic opportunity in ways that we've never seen before.
Dominica Lynch gave me an assignment, which was to draw out Secretary Graves to paint an overarching vision that could guide the day, to set the stage. If you agree with me that that's what he has done, please thank him as we exit this morning. Thank you.